You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, your most authoritative news analysis show. This show is brought to you by the kind of sponsorship of Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner, forgive me. MTN, welcome to the new world. Sasso Spray, fresh and powerful. Star Assurance, creating smiles since 1985. Celebrating 30 years of solid partnership. Lipton Tea, the #1 tea brand, and Yamvita. That is the delicious way to go. Now, straight away, I'm going to do something. We are going to the EC's forum to hear bits and pieces of what had to be shared and discussed with all of us in the course of the week. You will hear the EC chair and some other persons and what they had to say. Very brief interaction to have. Then I'll return to the studio and we'll do a discussion. I'll introduce my guest. So right away, let's listen to bits and pieces of what transpired at the EC's forum of eminent panel, on the voters register. Should it be changed or audited? What do they mean by auditing? And did the EC give a verdict that, in fact, all of those claims for change or auditing are misplaced?
In our view, it essentially is a matter of law. And I think that it happens to border around issues of whether an illegal act can ripen into a legal one, and whether a law can be applied retrospectively or prospectively. I think essentially, we have to come to a certain conclusion about that fact. But our view from Imani is this. If an error was committed in the beginning by using the NHIS cards, we must admit that all those entries are erroneous and anomalous. But whether that person should be struck off the voters register is another matter. And that matter happens to border on whether they are qualified to be voters or not. And our view is that if it turns out to be so, that they are qualified but they came in through the NHIS card, which now can be considered to be illegal, they must be given the opportunity to correct that error. So in a sense for us, that's part of the cleansing process. If we have a register of about 9 to 12 million people, the work involved, and I heard somebody talk about building a new structure and cleansing a new structure, the work involved cleaning may or may not be more difficult than building a new one. The determination of which of the two options is more difficult, more expensive, more expedient should be made by an august body like yours. But our view is this. It should not be said by anybody that a new register is by all means what we have to have. What we have to have is a credible register. And it may be that a new one will give us that. But that is not automatic. It may also be that even if out of the 9 million entries, 1 million of them are in error, cleansing 1 million may not be as difficult as redoing 9 million. So our viewpoint is that if you put this thing out, and I had a question about viewing and having an IT skills to view, we don't think it's going to be that difficult. And there are political parties behind this whole process. So it should be possible over a 6-month period to go through the list in the Ashanti region, in the Volta region, and in Cape Coast and so, and make sure that your entry is there. It's just like going to the table to go and check. And in any case, that does not stop us from doing a physical verification of the register. The whole point is this. If there are entries in the register, which some people or somebody or any group thinks is an entry that should not be there, they can list them, send them to the EC, and have them expunged, and we will have a register which we all can agree with.
And you heard Kofi Bento of Imani Ghana, who spoke at the forum, and the views of his group, Imani Ghana. Now, I just reading just a portion of the Friday, October 30 edition of the Daily Graphic, and the way it captured what transpired on the first day of the interaction. And this is what it says was the NPP's position. The speaking at the Stakeholders Forum on the Voters Register organized by the Electoral Commission in Accra yesterday, a former national chairman of the NPP, Mr. Peter McMahon, reiterated the NPP's position of multiple registration, multiple voter identity numbers, foreign nationals on the electoral roll. He also alleged that the number of voters' names in the register vis-a-vis the population size was unacceptable. For example, Mr. McMahon said for Ghana, the percentage of the persons on the voters register vis-a-vis the population size was around 56%, while in Kenya and other African countries, it was between 20 and 25%. He also alleged that there were 530,000 voters on the register who could not be accounted for, which showed that the register was statistically defective. He explained that because the present biometric system could not automatically detect those ineligible voters, the EC was suffering from a computer system failure and that the system could not be relied on to clean the register. He then urged the EC to investigate the allegations that 76,000 plus foreigners' names were in the voters' register. The NPP's position as summarized by the graphic Abdul Aziz reporting. Now, let's go back to the forum.
Yes, problems exist, but there are systems to deal with those problems. There are established systems to deal with those problems. And for some of the problems, the solution that is being proposed is not a solution that can deal with the problem. For instance, take the issue about inclusion of minors on the register, the allegation of inclusion of minors on the register. We have said elsewhere in our paper that if minors were registered in 2012, so would they remain minors up to 2016, for instance? Because age is not static. So if your solution is to target those minors for deletion, or because of the deletion of those minors, you want to undertake a new registration, what you will have is that as many of the minors who have grown up into adults will now come openly to register. Have you caught them and deleted them? But the same flaws that led to the minors to register in 2012 in the first place, can you demonstrate to us that those loopholes have been plugged such that the current minors will not enter the register and bloat it further? We proceed to conclude that the one who lost elections has not suffered loss of public confidence, but the one whose work was confirmed by the Supreme Court is rather the one who must suffer loss of public confidence. I just don't understand. Because I thought that the Supreme Court, in upholding the results as declared by Electoral Commission, should lead to increased public confidence in the Commission's work. Because there are other people, neutral people, who have come to testify that the Commission has done a good job. So why do we then conclude that because of that Supreme Court thing, there is loss of confidence in our electoral system, for which reason we must proceed to introduce changes, whether they are based on facts or not?
We observe the 18 plus in all the countries we quoted, and the source, as we quoted, was of the africanelections.tripod.com. That's our source. So we did that. Also, we are aware that Ghana has a 2.5% increase. we observed the 18 plus in all the countries we quoted. And the source, as we quoted, was of the African elections.tripod.com. That's our source. So we did that. Also, we are aware that Ghana has a 2.5% increase in population annually. So we adjusted the 2010 figures to meet the 2015 voters and took into account what the register, what the census said about foreigners, about West African population living here. We took all that into account.
Cost analysis that you have made in terms of identifying, which we can easily identify, and doing away with the errors, the cost involved, as against your analysis of the cost involved in the preparation of a brand new register altogether, so that we can be guided by this.
Let me answer Eme with a quotation from the Supreme Court ruling of Abu Ramadan and co-suit number JON 11/2014. And it says, with your permission, Mr. Chair, I'll quote from the Supreme Court. Voter registration is crucial to the success of the entire electoral process. For it to establish the eligibility of citizens to the franchise, it is the gateway to the right to vote, the open door to participation in governance process, and by logical reasoning, the sovereignty of the state. The registration process must therefore be protected from underage persons, non-citizens, and voter forces alike, in order to avoid the process being perceived as flawed, unquote. This is what the Supreme Court said in their ruling. So the Electoral Commission has a duty to protect. It's not for me to say the process gives room for this and that, so we allow it to go. No, the Supreme Court ruled against that.
You're welcome back. And you just heard Johnson Asiedu Nketia of the NDC. He's the General Secretary. Then after that, you heard Peter McMenu, who is former National Chairman of the NPP and is a consultant in his own right as far as election matters are concerned. He's an expert. And he represented the NPP and gave their version of what they wanted to be done as far as the register was concerned. It's very interesting. In the course of the program, among the questions we'll be finding out will be whether or not this whole thing has been turned into an NPP-NDC debate. Well, my guests in the studio are Kweku Bako Jr. He is editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. He's a regular panelist here on the show. Dr. Emmanuel Akwete is executive director of the Institute of Democratic Governance, that is IDEC, and he's also with the CFI, that is the forum that's also been championing this particular cause, but taking a certain middle ground and asking for some prevention and deterrence in the processes, not exactly a new register or an audit of same. And then also Sylvester Mensah. He's a presidential staffer and former chief executive, immediate past chief executive of the NHIA. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome to Newsfile. Thank you. Right. We're expecting Dr. Pokwe Osei, who is a senior law lecturer at the University of Ghana Law School, to join us ably to represent the New Patriotic Party. We also be speaking to a few people on the phone lines. And as you heard me introduce, this is going to be our major issue for the morning. We're going to look at the issue of the electoral reforms and then also look at the opposition party and the internal mess that is attempting to fix. And then when we do have time, We'll be asking a series of questions, including government. This is a government that promised to fix the longest ever energy crisis, but it is now asking and seeking to rely solely on the citizens to give it cash to be able to keep that promise. How is that, politicians? Okay, so thank you, Doc. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you.
Nice.
Now, I'd like to start on this note. First of all, can we look at what your views are, observations were about the entire conduct of the forum? And I start with Kweku.
Well, in principle, I had endorsed the need for having this kind of forum to the extent that it widens the scope of discussions and brings, some other stakeholders, including political parties, to ventilate their views. I never for one moment assumed that it would deliver the final solution to the controversy that had ensued over the period. I never for one moment. It would have been the height of naivety to have assumed that two-day forum, as important as it is or was, would deliver a solution. In terms of the conduct of proceedings, I think it was okay. I didn't see much that was negative. There have been few slips here and there. There's a sudden resurrection of some parties that I thought they were dead and buried. Saw their reps there. It's democracy, so it's going to be difficult for me to say, why did the EC do that? After all, if they are still on their register, and some of them, I'm told, are still attend IPAC meetings in recent times. So yes, but you realize that some of those parties, their reps, had a certain, the content of their language. They came in a combative mood, targeting one party and assaulting. That itself was a reflection of their level of development.
But you often say that democracy accommodates the lunatic fringe.
So that's why I began by saying I understand why the EC had to invite them. That's in order.
Interesting.
But you see, the point I'm making is that those negatives, fortunately, was it the chairman called one of them to order?
Right.
Cautioned the gentleman that watch your language. That was indicative of the fact that if the thing had been allowed to proceed, it would only have polluted the environment and actually undermined the otherwise noble objective of the occasion.
All right. Mr. Mensah, you were there yourself. What do you say about the panel, the eminent panel, and how they engaged those who did the presentations?
Thank you very much. Let me start by saying that this whole idea of having a discussion, a conversation over the voters' register has been impregnated or was impregnated by the New Patriotic Party. And that is the beauty of democracy. Today, we have had the opportunity of having a very interesting and useful conversation.
Well, they'll tell you they've always led the reforms in this country as far as elections are concerned.
Well, I mean, if it's about making agitations and generating a forum for discussions, of course, that is also part of the political process. And it is essential, it is useful, it is necessary. I think that we had a very wonderful panel, panel members with a varied experience and exposure and, of course, opinion. And I think the Electoral Commission did extremely well in putting together the panel. I must add that not only was the conversation extremely useful, but offered an opportunity for the public to, as it were, follow the discussions and enroll in the discussions. I think that there was nothing outstanding in this two-day forum. On the contrary, to what my very good friend and senior brother Kweku Baku said, I think that the two-day forum was very adequate. It provided the opportunity for all the parties to ventilate their key views, their key challenges. If it's about processing...
Is there anything you heard at the forum that you've not heard on the media as, for example, on this platform, I hosted Mark Meno, I hosted Mr. Seydou Nketia. I just heard them rehash simply repeat what they have been saying all along.
Yeah, but this time perhaps in a more structured manner, under the auspices of not only of the Electoral Commission, but an eminent panel listening attentively and trying to make some sense out of the discourse.
Okay.
And I think that was extremely useful.
Right.
And in particular for the public to follow this discussion for 2 days. And I can assure you that the public was deeply interested in this discussion.
Okay. Dr. Duse, my question to him really was about how the panel engaged the presenters. How did you see it? So I'm not sure you were there yourself, but watching outside or listening on radio, how they engaged them, how they sought to elicit, some responses from them. What do you say about the interaction?
Oh, thank you very much. I must indicate that some of the questions were instructive. Some were disappointing. But the overall impression I got from the discussions were that we have serious institutional problems. And that has translated into an institution such as the Electoral Commission. Said that when the issues were raised by NPP initially, some decided to brush them aside. But, I mean, a number of the people who made presentations acknowledged certain things, that we have serious problems with the register, there are minors in them, there are scanned photographs in them, and for that reason, if a data that is supposed to be sacrosanct to have such flaws, it means that we have institutional malaise in the country, and that has translated across the board in other spheres. The other issue, impression I got, was also raised by Kweku, that some political parties that we thought were non-existent had all of a sudden resurfaced, and the impression they gave was that they become appendages of the leading parties in the country, and depending on where your purse is coming from, then you toe a certain line. That means
In fact, the former First Lady Nana Akufo-Addo Rawlings suggests that it's reported to have said that some of them appear to have been paid to come and support particular views.
And she's not far from right, in that when someone starts saying, I'm your mother, I'm this, I went to Obama land, and we know how the Obama trips were sponsored. So it means that we need political cleansing as well. Otherwise, the institutions are not going to assist us.
Well, I'll not go beyond that. Now, Doc, you were there yourself,
yes,
and you actually made a presentation.
Yes.
I was fortunate to be driving around just that time, so I listened fully to what you had to present.
Yes.
Tell us what you make of the entire process and the procedure.
Yeah. Well,
how were you selected to make a presentation in the first place?
First of all, in August, when the EC decided that it asked the parties to make submissions, it also wrote civil society organizations. We have a long history of working with the institution, IPAC, electoral reforms, and so on. We tend to, and since 2008, in all the critical issues, we play various roles in engaging them. But also as a research and advocacy organization, and also as part of the Civic Forum initiative, as you said. So we got a letter and we responded to that letter in 2 ways. You recall that we did a press statement. The CFI met, deliberated over several days. In fact, in all, we did about 3 different papers. We did one that was press statement. We did another we called the options paper. And then out of the options paper, we came out with the presentation that we did on that day.
Okay, so would you say that the platform gave you sufficient opportunity to put forward your position, and what are your expectations?
It did. First of all, we organize a lot of public forums ourselves, and when there are critical national issues of this nature, the most important thing is to create a space for discussions that is also educating and enlightening. The public ought to know. Sometimes the issues, as they started, before the forum, it was MPP versus NDC, vice versa, and then the debates are organized, and it's so tight and so focused, and is litigation opposed and this and that. But then there are always bigger issues that needs to, very simple issues that need to be explained, because this is an issue that the public has great interest. And so what the forum did is it also enabled the public, all the actors were in one room, which is very good. And you get them to talk. I mean, they did it in a very civil way. They made the arguments, they presented their cases, questions were asked. But here you had the parties, you had civil society organizations, you had the EC itself, and then a panel moderating it, so that the views came out clearly. We were in the same place. And in the process, I think people learned a lot more.
Okay.
We all had adequate time, I would say, because you could always come back.
Dr. Disa, this was supposed to be a public forum. Can it be said to be a public forum where, you know, not everybody in the public had access, but they selected known names and known faces that we know are the ones, institutions, are the ones that when they made the presentation, all others simply had to just observe?
Well, that is how democracy is about. It's not all the time that the voice of every person can count. And here is the case that we have institutions that are playing different roles in society. So we have NGOs representing the informal sector, and then the formal sector, other stakeholders are also on board. It tells us that we serve as the voice of the downtrodden, and in speaking for them, they trust us to uphold certain standards. My view of such a standard in a public discourse is actually consistent with what Ross, one of the leading philosophers of his time, said, that for a public discourse, even if someone is advancing an argument and you disagree with the person, at least the argument should be put in such a way that is devoid of emotions, and that those justifications that we prefer to say that you should change the register should even appeal to the opponent. That is what you call a public justificatory framework. And I think that a lot of the arguments that came and on board failed to meet that test.
Interesting. Now, what outcomes are you expecting?
For the New Patriotic Party, they presented a germane case as far back as August to the Electoral Commission. And after that, the Electoral Commission waited for a month before informing all others that they should bring additional information if they have. And then additional information were further submitted to the Electoral Commission. So it's been 2 months now. A public forum has been organized. But the key issues that were raised in the petition that were submitted to the Electoral Commission remain unanswered. In that when you receive a petition from someone saying that there are minors...
Take note of what he's saying right now. He says that the issues that were raised by the NPP remain unanswered. I want you to look at what the EC boss said, her presentation, and tell us whether you still feel that these issues remain unanswered. She's not answered them. Right.
Yes. So as I was saying, there are minors in the album. Some may interpret minors to be that at the point they registered, they were maybe 14 years old. That's not the definition of a minor. So anyone who is not capable of being on the register, you could still have some in it. They have scanned pictures, how you could get into a system as sacrosanct as that of the Electoral Commission. It means that it involved the personnel who fed information in, because that's how ITT works. And for that reason, it raises another issue. So anytime we're able to find this, then it tells us who are the people who are going to do the so-called cleansing. Isn't it going to be the same personnel, or you're going to get an independent audit firm to be able to do that kind of work? The other aspect is that when the NPP made a case that a new album is required, there were counter arguments that we don't need a new album, but rather we need to have a cleaned album. In that case, we can do the exercise of what you call surgical operation, and look at how the tortoise looks like. I mean, after the surgical operation, what is left is what you see as the back of a tortoise shell. So we believe that the EC should have informed the public about the cost-benefit analysis of going the clean way or going the repaired way. And in that case, we can compare both and say that if we go wholeheartedly to do a new register, this is how much it will cost us. If we go to clean the register, this is how much it will cost us. Then we will test it against our capability and then start sourcing for funds to do the work.
I listened to the comments of members of the NPP and leaders after the forum, and there appears to be, you know, a certain feeling that they've lost their arguments.
Well, the posturing speaks volumes. I mean, that when the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, you don't get it normally, it's a commission, and it's chaired by one person. So it means that the other commissioners as well. When she gave her presentation, I mean, throughout the 2 days, you got a certain sense of what was coming. Some were even thinking that it's now going to be, let's say, 3 political parties on one side and the others. That is why we have to also clean those political institutions, because if you are going to equate UPP or Kwadamko's party with that
IPP, you meant?
Yes, and then give them a vote. Then it's like not appreciating the positions of power dynamics, even in global politics. You go, Ghana is going to rub shoulders with the United States. But we know that those shoulders are not rubbed, properly. And eventually, the lower or the lesser countries stand not to gain from it. So my point is that we need to get a complete disclosure from the EC as to what they have found out based on the evidence we presented. Initially, they were even pushing the onus on us to present the registered album of Togo. But just 2 days ago, it's been done. But we thought that an independent institution in which such a case has been made to you, don't you go out and get additional information as well? Because EC, as an institution of Ghana, dealing with EC of Togo, will easily get access to any information it wants. But here's the case that they decided to push the burden that we have presented the case. We'll present the evidence. The evidence has been presented. Urgent response is needed. Otherwise, the other side will believe that you are just dragging your feet.
Sincere apologies to our radio listeners because we are having some difficulty, challenges with the radio feed. And many of you are sending us your frustration with having to hear the sound in clear quality on radio. The engineers are presently fixing it, and we're hoping that they'll be able to fix it and fix it well. Thank you very much. Apologies, sincere apologies. Now, Mr. Mensah, I was asking you whether you thought that listening to the EC after the presentation, you felt that the NPP's allegations have not been addressed.
Yeah, let me start by saying that unfortunately, the struggle for the people's mandate has become rather too emotional in this country. And besides, our political space appears to be occupied with so much dishonesty and mistrust. It's weighing heavily on unsuspecting people. The issue we are discussing is a very emotional one, and we need to have very cool heads in discussing this matter in a way that we can carry the people along with us. We listened to a number of arguments presented at the forum, and I would want to pick particularly the MPP's presentation. NDC has complained that, one, the challenges that have been mentioned lack clarity. One of the key challenges that the NPP put across has to do with voter population as a percentage of national population. The figures that the NPP presented were carefully selected, and these figures did not represent the average figures in Africa and elsewhere. Our demographic data and age distribution vary from country to country. There are no two countries with the same age distribution, particularly because I have worked with statistical service data in my previous position as chief executive in dealing with exemption categories and what have you. I have known for a very long time that in Ghana, all those below the age of 18 account for not less than 45% of our population. And by extension, our simple logic, 18 years and above will certainly be above 54, 55%. And I have the same data that Mr. Peter McMenu used in providing his analysis. And I find it a little pathetic in the sense that he just selected countries with demographic data that support a claim that he wanted to make to the public, which I thought was rather disingenuous. In Ghana, all those 18 years and above account for 55.2%. In Nigeria, it's 50.4%. In Cote d'Ivoire, it's 53.2%. If we move beyond West Africa, you come to Kenya. Tunisia, you come to Kenya, it's 51%. Tunisia, 72%. Egypt, 63%. If we move beyond there to advanced countries like Germany, it's 82.6%, 18 years and above. Ukraine, 82%. Switzerland, 82%. United Kingdom, 79%. Brazil, 74%. Argentina, 71%. Canada, 80%. United States, 77%. And so when you are confronted with such lopsided argument, trying to, as it were, deceive the public, let me put it that way, because I think that the purpose was to get the public to enroll in a view that was entirely inaccurate. And I thought that was not very fair. And that completely undermines one of their key arguments of a challenge, inherent in the voters' register. Besides, from the discussions and from international best practice, the credibility of a voters' register is greatly impaired, significantly impaired, if two conditions obtain. One is a situation where there's double voting, one that allows for double voting, and two, one that allows for impersonation. In all our discourse, in all our discussions, there was no single evidence adduced to support the fact that in our elections in 2012, there was an incident of double voting or impersonation. I think that it is important for us to assess what is happening in other countries as a basis for understanding our internal circumstances and situations. Very often, we simply look at what is happening in our country and quick in passing judgment without making reference.
But Mr. McMahon, you use other countries like Kenya, and you say that is disingenuous. The NPP also makes a point about what Nigeria was able to do with Professor Jega. And so what are you talking about? For example, when they use the Nigerian example, between 2011 or 2012 and 2015, he was able to single-handedly prosecute an agenda that cleaned their register, taking out as many as 6 million names. And they are saying, if our register also has similar problems, we think we should be able to deal with it.
Well, that is a situation. If you want to say that our situation is akin to that of the Nigerian situation, then perhaps we may want to look at the Nigerian solution. But you and I know that our circumstances, our situation is completely different from that of the Nigerian situation. Besides, as a management professional, when you are dealing with a problem, what you look at essentially is what is the problem? Clearly define the problem. What are the alternative solutions? What is the most satisfying solution?
No, but put correctly.
What are the alternatives? What are the most satisfying?
Factually, the Ghanaian situation may not be said to be different from the Nigerian situation, where you have double or multiple, names in the register and so on and so forth, and yet about 6 million was able to be taken out, and then within that period, you had for example, the opposition's votes remained the same after the register had been cleaned. Okay, but the PDP lost by, I think, over 10 million or so.
No, there may be a lot of confounders in that. That cannot be a straight line type of analysis. There may be several confounders. But you see, our system has an inherent mechanism, and that was, revealed in the discourse. There is an internal mechanism for dealing with such challenges. And it isn't the case that those challenges have never occurred or that the mechanism hasn't been applied in dealing with some of those challenges. It was quite obvious that there is a committee of party, with reps from the various parties that engage in regular deletion of names that should not be in the register. In any case, let us not look at a perfect situation because there's no perfect situation anywhere in the world. I mean, which countries are we looking at? Which countries are we benchmarking? What are the challenges with their register? Are their challenges bigger than our challenges? We need to factor all that in determining. We don't throw the baby away with the bathwater. In any case, granted, and with the understanding that we have a mechanism, the mechanism has been applied in dealing with similar challenges in the past and has been done successfully. And today, because we're going into an election, there's a need to further review our register for integrity, for the next elections. And we think that there's a need to relook at issues of names that shouldn't be in the register. Now, tell me, you have a register of about 13 to 14 million. Granted that you have even 500 names that should be deleted from the register. Do you go, doing a complete registration as a result of 500 names when you have a mechanism that can effectively delete these names? At the end of the day, we are looking at effectiveness and efficiency. What is the most effective way of deleting the names? Can the names be deleted? The answer is yes. Can the names be identified? The answer is yes. Can it be deleted? The answer is yes. So what is the most effective, what is the most efficient way of deleting or ensuring greater credibility of our register? And I think that that is the issue that we need to respond to at the moment. You don't go doing a new register because you have money. You have money, and so go do a new register. These same arguments that are being adduced today as a basis, a foundation for a new register, are reasons that can be adduced every 4 years in this country. Is it the case that every 4 years Ghana would have to do a new register? I'm not sure that is the way to go. We must also look at efficient use of resources. We must look at achieving some efficiency and effectiveness in what we're doing by using the most effective and efficient way. And I think that is the way.
You spoke about the ability to remove or delete names. The EC chair then, Dr. Kuja Farijan, for example, at the courts, repeated where you had, you spoke about through deduplication, being able to take care of over 8,000 double or multiple registrations. These are also figures that Codeo, questioned if whether or not these people were prosecuted and ought to have been prosecuted. Also, you have the CFI, which Dr. Akwete belongs. They have asked the same question, what was done about them. But the NPP, after that, did its own internal, just scanning through the register, skimming through the register, also discovered in excess of, 2,000 of the same. We don't even know if those have been removed or have not been removed.
My brother,
yes. So they are speaking to a certain patent error.
No, you are saying that 8,000 names were discovered. Indeed, the Electoral Commissioner indicated that in her presentation, and that those names were identified and together through the same mechanism that have been developed by the Electoral Commission, those names were deleted. And in the course of time, any anomaly that is observed is brought to the table, and there is a committee that deals with it. So what has changed? If the MPP, we're not saying that the MPP is not saying the truth. If the MPP has observed some 2,000 additional names, I don't know, I can't vouch for that, but if that is what they claim, what prevents them from putting this up through the same mechanism to get it deleted and then let the public know that, yes, we send this to the table for discussion and deletion, no action has bin done, and nobody is working on it. And
But they move the next step and ask you the next question. That, for example, as we speak, in 2014, the EC came up with this figure of 68,000 new figure representing double registrations. Then after the limited registration of 2014, the figure went up to 72,000 72,000 being double registrations. The question they ask you is, if you say your system is so good, how come you had this happening? And is it not the case that perhaps the system has been compromised so that there are some people who are fixing these names in there? So why don't we change the entire system?
My brother, let me explain this to you. For every process, there is a risk factor. And for every risk factor, there must be a mitigating arrangement. Ghana and the Electoral Commission is not saying that there are no risks of possible double registration. Nobody has said that. But what is being said is that these risks have been identified. Some efficient risk assessment has been done. These risks are known, and the system has an inherent mechanism, and that is why these have surfaced. These have been identified. Is it the case?
Stop them from happening. Is
it? Oh, of course. I mean, when it comes to, of course. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, quality. We must assure quality right from the beginning of the process. But if you even do that, you must still have processes along the line to identify risks when they crystallize.
But this is exactly what the biometric machine was supposed to stop.
Yeah. And so, are you saying that the biometric machine is said to be 99% efficient? At the end of the day, it takes human beings to operate these systems. A system is as efficient as the people who operate it.
Right.
And who are those who operate it? It's the political parties, the MPP, the NDC, the PPP. We are the very people who undertake or get our people out there to register.
No, but on the allegations that suggest, fixing and scanning some names onto something, the parties cannot be party to that. So no. The MPP, for example, is suspicious of the STL.
I think that allegation, it still remains an allegation. There is no real evidence throughout the discussions, throughout the conversation at the forum. That issue did not seem to, at least,
resonate.
Yeah, well, I mean, it came up briefly, but it appeared that it was thrown out because
so it
wasn't valid.
Let me bring in
it wasn't a valid one.
Here. And Dr. Charles Rekubrube did a presentation, and when he ended, he said this for food for thought. He said, it's not the voting that counts. It's not the voting that's democracy. It's the counting. It's not the voting that's democracy. It's the counting. And then he ended by saying, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And that's a quote from Thomas Jefferson. Do you agree with him to a large extent that this is what it ought to be, and the parties must ensure that their vigilance mechanisms are, are adequate as far as our process is concerned?
Well, can there be counting without voting? What would you be counting?
You can't vote.
Yeah. So there's an organic interrelationship. Perhaps I'm trying difficulty to get a point. Maybe suggesting that the critical area is the counting, because that's when declaration would occur and determine who then leads. But there is no Chinese war between voting and counting. They go together. So I can understand where Tarzan is coming from. He's asking us to be vigilant. It's true. Political parties have agents out there, electoral commissioners, officers and officials out there. But we brought in technology to try and make sure we can actually enhance the integrity of the system, knowing that the human element is always there and could be compromised here and there. Now there's an allegation or a claim that the technology that we introduced might have been compromised, that there is a challenge to data and system integrity and security. For me, as I've always said here, that all the other issues, I believe, can be tackled using even conventional means or improving on the conventional means. My difficulty has been with that area of possible or perceived technical manipulation of the system, the scan picture thing. That's where my emphasis has been. All what I heard, I've heard before. Good point that there was a panel to ask few questions. So that's distinct from a press conference. But of course, it's virtually like a panel like this, where questions are also asked of us. We may have to wait to see the report that the panel brings out. I don't think they are going to be able to consolidate a report based on the 2-day event. I think they ought to go beyond the 2-day event and have some other focused interactions with some of the stakeholders. So all the things that are being said, clearly, you see, when I hear, for instance, the minor one, and I want to deal with some few specifics, the thing about minors and the rationalization that they might have been 14 at the time they got inserted, and that 4 years later they are 18. Who determined that they were 14 at that point in time? Who did? Or those who are saying so, they sponsored the insertions. They knew their ages. I don't get the point. How would you know that a person was 14 at the time he was registering? So 4 years later, he is 18. Unless perhaps you were part of the recruitment. It doesn't make sense. So it shouldn't be thrown into the debate.
I thought it was an example he was giving.
Come off it.
That's
example
you are
based on
making
what?
allegation that some people registered when they were 14.
Wait.
They will not be 14 for the next election.
From where? On what foundation? It's meant to distort the discussion.
The foundation is that they are minors on the register.
So who determined their age at the point in time that they got onto the register?
Exactly.
So as to be able to tell us 4 years later, they are okay, so we should leave them there. That's the solution they are prescribing. They are saying that they ought to be allowed because now they've qualified. Forget the illegality that was committed, even coming along with that insertion or recruitment. I'm saying that that is not a reason.
Let me help you. Let me help you. Let me help you.
I don't need your help.
Let me help you. I think the starting point is the initial allegation that minors are on the register,
which is a fact.
So,
yes, but you are now proposing a solution.
Which fact? Which is a fact?
That's actually beyond an allegation because from 2008, the EC has made the point.
Yes, but you see, so the solution is not. You don't get. I'm pointing, underscoring, or underlying the absurdity of the solution. I'm not contesting the fact that there are minors there, because that's a fact.
Right.
But you are prescribing a solution. And your solution is that, they might have been 18 within 4 years, so allow them there. How do you determine that? So I'm saying it's an absurdity. And it is thrown in.
We now have very clear sound on radio. Once again, our apologies because we've gotten tons of messages so far that have been complaining about radio. Radio is now in crystal clear sound. Thank you very much.
So it means that we may have to go beyond the prescription that is being offered to determine. Of course, I know the difficulties with our birth certificates and all the rest. We have school records, we have so many other records that can be used to determine. And before you can say, let this minor remain on the register in spite of the illegality that was previously committed.
Okay, just hold on briefly for me. You mentioned a point for which I want to bring in the EC boss, Mrs. Charlotte Osei. You talk about you can use school records, you can use other records to do some of these things. She spoke extensively about some of these issues and raised the real challenges. You're saying we should go to some other country and try and compare a register. How are you going to do that? And you are not going to be able to force to get that to do any comparison and all of that. Let's listen to her briefly on some of the areas that she spoke about.
We still do not have a robust national identity system independent of the EC. And clearly, the problems we have with the existing register are because we cannot say definitively who is a Ghanaian or who is a minor. So if we start this new register and we start from a fresh sheet, when people come to the registration center, it gives you 3 options basically for establishing your nationality and your age. You can have a passport, you can produce a driver's license, or you can produce a national identity card. If you do not have either of these 3 documents, how are you going to establish your identity? We cannot say that provide your existing voter ID card, because that is inherently importing the flaws in the existing register into the new register. So if we say this register is incurably flawed and we're going to start a new one, why would we say produce your existing card as a means of coming onto the new register? The other issue is we also cannot say have 2 people on the register come and attest to you, because we will not have a register. We are starting fresh. So this is a major challenge, and we would welcome the input of the political parties. There is no perfect registration system in the world. And we do want to ensure that we have a credible register, which would be the foundation for credible elections in 2016. As an election management body, it is critical. But we must also make sure that whatever solutions we adopt must work within the time frame, but must also address the concerns which have been raised by the parties. I left out one thing. In terms of other allegations by the New Patriotic Party regarding the Togolese and the pictures of an entire police station that were scanned, we have requested from the party the actual register of the K2 South District Police Station that was used in the analysis, because we need to make sure we're comparing apples to apples and not using a 2015 register to compare allegations made probably in a 2012 register. We are waiting receipt of that. As soon as we get that, I'm sure in a day or 2 we can give them our findings. We are also waiting for the register from Togo, which we do not have, because the one that was provided to us by the party had just the faces, didn't have names, and didn't have other bio details. As soon as we get that, we can also conclude our findings and revert to the party. So back to looking ahead, there's no perfect system, and we must all work to ensure that we have a credible register within the time frame we have, is 12 months to an election. But there is no avoiding the fact that you cannot have a credible register if all the critical stakeholders are not involved as part of the solution for any of the options that we pick. We can change the register, we can change the electoral process, but until there is reform of our political parties and our electorates in terms of how they engage in the system, we will still have a register that is not credible, regardless of how much money we put into the system. And so the EC by itself cannot ensure a credible register. And one of the questions we've been asking ourselves is, Ghana probably has the most inclusive process for creating a register. How can such an inclusive process bring results that parties say are so flawed and require change every 4 years? Surely, we may have to think, is the problem.
All right. Her voice was truncated there, but Kweku, proceeding from where she left off, a new register doesn't appear to be the solution.
Did she say that? Or this is a deduction by you, a logical deduction? I didn't get that drift. She was outlining challenges that may confront us as a nation if we were to embark on, putting out a credible register. Credible register could either come out from cleansing it or having a new one. And I think that's where the essential thing is. For me, it's premature at this stage to come to any conclusion as to what really happened at the forum, pointing into any direction. It's premature. Most of the issues had already been outlined and things. But I think that if we are challenged, we can find solutions to them. Because of what you did by playing a summation, you've taken you've shifted me slightly, and because that was going to be one of my substantive submissions, is to do with the NPP petition. Am I permitted
Go ahead, go ahead. Go ahead.
The point about a letter that had been sent to the party requesting for some information, 2 areas. I'm not sure whether if I heard Dr. Yusuf right, because I got the impression as if he said that had been done the last 2 days.
2 days ago on Thursday.
I would be surprised because Friday, yesterday, it came up at the forum. And I thought I heard the General Secretary explaining that they received the letter only last Thursday, and rather was thinking that the EC had a primary responsibility to contact the Togolese for the copy. Am I right? Yesterday, this occurred yesterday. So I'll be surprised if indeed it had been sent there. See, a letter was indeed sent to the NPP. The letter was dated 19th October. My sources at the EC insist it was delivered the same day. I have no way of proving that to be true because I haven't seen any documentary trail. And this was a low point in yesterday's thing, even though I don't think it's a fatal injury to the NPP's cause, because there's no way that forum was going to be able to deal with that core area of the NPP's petition or complaint. But you see, something, I found out that that letter was received by the NPP's Director of Finance and Administration, and he sat on it. Yes, he received it. He's given 2 stories that he was thinking of making photocopies for everybody as well as to deliver it to the Baumia team. Another version is that the time he received it, somebody was threatening his life. So he had to leave the vicinity. Apparently he read the contents of the letter. So that's why he knew that it was meant to tell the party, bring these documents, and also that it ought to be sent to the Baumia team. I say it's not a fatal injury in the sense that there's still time for the party to produce those documents. But it was completely needless. When we come to the NPP side, you will see this is a reflection of the state of the administration. Otherwise, an important letter of that nature brought to you, even assuming without admitting that it was brought last Thursday, it was about 7 days to the forum. 7 days to the forum. Key area. An officer of the party takes it and is unable to bring it to the attention of, and let me be honest, I believe the General Secretary wasn't aware. Yeah, I believe so. First of all, he wasn't even in the jurisdiction. But it doesn't have to take his physical presence for that correspondence.
Obviously, because of the ongoing confusion.
I suspect so. That's part of the drill, but I don't want to go in there because we have the party's side to come. But there's a linkage to this forum. And you see, when the commissioner, or when the chairperson made that disclosure, it took something away from the NPP's case. It was as if the party was not prepared enough. Indeed, the party as a corporate entity was not aware that such an important letter had been brought to its notice in order for it to prepare and deliver certain documents. Having said that, let me be honest with you. The 2 essential demands. My view is that yes, I agree with the principle that he who alleges must offer proof. But we are talking here of not mere allegation. We are talking of something that borders on the integrity of our election system. I believe that beyond any failure by the party to produce, the EC ought to proceed to Togo to get the document. It's a national interest we are talking about here. If the party, now they say they will produce, but assuming without admitting, there is a failure on the part of the party to produce the document, I would still insist that the EC has the capacity and must exercise the responsibility of going for that document so that we can handle that particular core issue.
She intimated about questions of sovereignty in this regard.
Please come on.
Very legitimate.
Oh, come on. Come on. It's a legitimate thing, but it's not an obstacle to the assessing of that document if it's properly handled. In any case, have you forgotten there was even a story that a Ghana mission had attempted to sit with the Togo mission? Right. Have you forgotten?
Yes.
And there was no denial from the Ghana government. If the Ghana mission can sit with INEC, Togo INEC, who says the Ghana AEC cannot contact the Togo INEC, it can be done. Because I'm saying there's an overriding national interest to get that document to make a determination. I'm hoping that the MPP will give it out. But if they don't, I say the EC should go for it. Now, the second one, the one about the K2 South, I appreciate why the EC is saying the one with the MPP should be brought as well, because I'm told there have been some updating. Okay, so you need to see which one the MPP is holding in order to be able to do a comparative.
There's a 2012 one and there's 2014 one, which was updated.
Yes,
for the local government.
So that I appreciate the trust of the EC's position that the party must bring, even if the EC has them. How would the EC know which one, which exactly you are holding? So that one is fair deal. But you see, these two areas are critical to the MPP's case and to the determination as to whether we'll have a new or a clean one, in my candid opinion, as I've said, because that's where I'm looking at. If indeed it turns out that things were scanned and inserted, some are saying that, oh, but there's no evidence of double voting. The pictures, there must be a beneficiary of those who were doing that thing, if indeed it's true. Why would anybody want to scan pictures and infiltrate a system with when eventually it's of no use? Why would anybody want to do a thing like that?
The critical question the NDC asks in respect of that is that, granted this is found to be so, do you need a new register?
I am saying so. That's my bottom line.
Because you are able to make the detection means you are capable of removing, solving the problem.
Who knows other areas that the technology has been so injured fatally? Who knows? First of all, we're assuming that it shouldn't be so. It shouldn't be so. The integrity, and I'm saying this all based on assumptions. That's what we are doing because we haven't handled that issue.
That is so.
So, to be honest with you, and that is why I'm saying that if the party was aware of this letter, come down to the forum, I'm sure they would have responded. Because you see, let me finish. The answer the General Secretary gave yesterday could have been put in the form of a letter a week ago and sent to the East. You get my drift? That perhaps we think you are better placed to access the document from Togo EC, INEC than us. And that also this K2 thing, this is what we have or so and so. Standing on the platform at the forum and delivering that answer itself was not an excuse for the ineptitude and the inertia that have become clear to all of us for such a serious issue. And I think the party ought to take action within. That officer must be queried. The party ought to also offer a certain apology to his followers and the nation as such.
Now, my question too.
But there's on this same issue of Togo register, I think that as we speak today, is it true that the NPP has the Togo register? It may be true, it may not be true, we don't know.
Yeah, but
we don't know.
But I saw they have a SAM policy. If you recall, we've seen it here.
Yeah, we have.
But you see, that's a pull-out. That's a pull-out. So you have to have the whole document, even to determine whether the pull-out was from that one or not.
Exactly.
Fair deal.
Exactly. So we.
Then the next question to that also too is to make a determination of whether or not these are dual citizens.
Yes, exactly. Of course. Even though the key point is the infiltration, if indeed there was.
Okay. Now, what's the name? Zach Mohammed in Tema says that the beef I have with being vigilant means the political parties lack credibility. Who is the beneficiary of a bloated register? Then Kojo says that the EC claims the party agents supervise the election. Does it then mean, as an individual without the resource to organize polling agents, I can't contest for an election? I expect the EC to be diligent in their job because I pay tax and my tax is used in running the elections. Then Justice Osei says that out of the many stakeholders' submissions, only 2 were very clear. Ghana needs a new register. The rest are calling for cleansing or audit and some sort of modification. Even the EC isn't calling for a new one, so you can easily predict the direction of the verdict. In a system like this, mass conservation, garbage in, garbage out is key. We need a very secure, reliable, and credible national identification system, and our entries to the register will be unequivocal. Excellent forum, good sense of democracy. Now, Doc,
yes.
After listening, for example, after listening to the rest of my panelists, how do you want to approach the discussion going forward from the forum?
A couple of things. I think in the public mind, and this is the point of entry, we should make a clear distinction when we are speaking about the voters register between the manual photographic register and the biometric. And I think we should also take the technology seriously. The Nigerian register we've referred to earlier, what Atahiru Yega cleaned up was the manual register. He introduced the biometric register for the 2011 elections. That is why we also took opportunity, IDEG and the CFI, to invite him just before we did the registration in Accra, in Ghana, to come and explain to us or share the Togo experiences and the difficulties
Nigerian
with that.
experience.
Sorry for the Nigerian experience. And he did that, and many radio stations hosted him on that. So there is an important shift. And one of the things with the biometric register, we've talked to the experts, we've talked to the IT people, we've found out from others, is that its strength, the biometric register we went for, its strength really lies in checking multiple registration. And I think yesterday the EC said, based on the analysis and conversations with the parties before they went into this choosing what they would do, going high-tech on biometric, it was multiple registration and therefore multiple voting and impersonation. Those issues were decisive in choosing what they chose. So, and indeed it's been confirmed that multiple registration in the 2012 elections dropped considerably, and therefore multiple voting dropped. I'm not sure they totally, completely eradicated it. Okay, they have to prove that. So I haven't, but what I know is that many have pointed out to the strength of it. But the EC itself also increasingly told us that some people have tried to register. There was multiple registration, but their deduplication software run identified a good number of them. And I think that what I found to be the problem was that, if we're dealing with the integrity of the register, public trust in the register, which makes us then move to accept results because we think, well, this is what is there, and so on and so forth. And therefore, make us behave peacefully, accept it as nice Democrats and gentlemen. Well, this is what the people said, let's go, and so on. The more we just deduplicate, but the culprits are not dealt with, to tell people and also help them clear their minds that some wrongdoing had been cleared. But those who did it, it was against the law and they have been taken on, penalized or dealt with. The greater the feeling that we are still accommodating a lot of wrongdoing, and this has become part of the culture, a practice that persists. You see, and when you want to look at why don't we trust our registers, these are some of the acts that have encouraged us historically we've done. So in trying to deal with the credibility problem, multiple registration, I think, has been, to a large extent, effectively dealt with. Okay, there may be isolated instances, but if they come up, they can be dealt with. What the register cannot deal with is that because it's biometric and it runs essentially on our fingerprints, and this is permanent. I wish I could have your fingerprints, but I'm told that no matter what I do, I will not get it. So I wouldn't. So the argument is that if as much as we want to do, when we are going to do a new register, just in case we decided to do a new register, we should be aware that it is based on our fingerprints and our facial features, and we are told is the iris, the target. I don't know if that is the strongest part of what we have, but the fingerprint is what it's based on, okay? And that is what pulls out the data and so on. And you cannot duplicate, you cannot impersonate it and so on. And for me, that gives you the sense of the reliability of the data, the consistency, okay? And you can deal with the multiple registration and prevent and so on. You can improve. I'm told it's a software, it's customized, it can be strengthened further as the troubles come up and so on. They see where the weaknesses are. Not forgetting that it was the first time we were doing this under certain stress. In fact, Atahiri Ega told us the enormity, so many problems they had in Nigeria, and was even surprised that Ghana had gone for an advanced biometric system where they had to be very cautious and so on and so forth. So it's not a perfect once-for-all solution, but it's technology, and you can deal with it, other problems further as they come along, and I think it's important. The second point is that because we depend on fingerprint, technology, they said at this stage, or at the time they introduced this, could not differentiate between the fingerprints of a minor and an adult. And it cannot differentiate between the fingerprints of a foreigner and a citizen. Okay, so in that case, if you want to tackle the problem, the integrity, credibility problem, because we know there is a belief, okay, that minors are in the register. Then there are facts, maybe indicating or showing, as the allegations show. Although I think nobody has been able to quantify the number of minors who registered and where and so on. But because it's been standard practice,
all the parties and the EC itself confirm that indeed and in fact minors have gotten onto the register.
As a practice, you see, in 2008, EC was very definitive about minor registration and photographs, and they showed areas and they complained. In 2014, they couldn't give us those photos and figures, but rather they said that, you see, the system of proving you've attained majority, you are 18 years old, you know, is so loose, eh? And so it's practice. People get in. And now what we hear is that continuous registration is taking place. Okay, CFI has discussed this matter at length, and in fact, the view that we got from the various civil society leaders, probably this ought to be suspended until the ID cards issues are, because it's prone to the same problem of minors. It's a very decentralized registration going on in the districts and so on. And how do you tell?
The EC says it's executing the orders of the Supreme Court.
No, we understand, but if you are executing an order, and then you also have the risk, the very thing that is raising the questions about the integrity, something has to be done. So are we going to go through that just because we must? But we know the problem is going to generate and the risk involved. And I think maybe it needs to be discussed further. This is some matter that we think maybe IPAC, EC, and others have to get together and say, hey, how do we do this? If we have the national ID card, okay, it will help solve the problem, because the ID cards apparently that exist, and even the data entry, doesn't also provide years, age, and all that. So we are still prone to, you know, the infiltration of minors.
The CFI, more critically, didn't choose either side of the debate.
We think either side doesn't deal with the integrity problems, and I think the illegality issue, NDC saying clean, and should we say that somebody matured, okay, from whatever age? The minors could be any age up to 18, 17. Okay, so but could you say because you matured after 4 years that you went over the bar of 18 and so on, you are clean? No, there is that we are accommodating illegality, and it is the illegality that undermines public trust, knowing that there is wrongdoing that is still not corrected. Unless you correct the wrongdoing, you don't clear people's minds. So it's not just a matter of.
So this is my point. I don't get you.
Yes.
If you say a new register is not the solution and auditing is not the solution, what is the solution?
What we said was that the biometric data has features and qualities. It's a superior data. It's consistent, it's reliable. The majority, greater number of them, you need it. It's evidence and actions that will clean the register. Okay, that would introduce, that would increase the trust we have in the register. So this is an example we give you. We use the term, we say surgical. You need evidence, and the good thing about what MPP has produced is that they have produced some evidence. It needs to be verified, but that evidence, you know, the 76,000 people, I understand, with their names and details, they can pull them out, they can pull those names out for investigation, which you couldn't do easily with a manual register. So it is going to aid the investigation that has to take place and probably speed it up for us so that some resolution could be done. And once these problems are identified, the actions to be taken to purge, to take them out, to penalize and so on can be done. Okay, whereas if you throw this register away, it means that the 76,000 and all those people are going to go scot-free. And they could well come back. We don't know. You know, we don't know. So it's a register that calls for a different attitude to tackling problems. And we must use that because the integrity problem will not be solved simply because a register is brand new. In fact, we are likely to get more.
Very finally and quickly about this from you. The independent presidential candidate for the 2012 elections.
Yes,
Joy.
Yes.
Jacob Osei.
Yes.
I want to ask you whether you feel he really appreciates the situation and he has a solution. He says, sounds very simplistic. He says, simply exhibit the register.
Yes.
Let people come and let's go through the verification and authentication process.
Yes.
You give them a certain grace period.
Yes.
That's my understanding. I'm interpreting what he said.
Yes.
So at a certain point, we shut the door. If you have come and you've been able to physically verify or authenticate, you will vote. If you have not, then you are out.
You know, it's not, you've presented it correctly as one, but I think when he mentioned it yesterday, he was looking at the newly eligibles. Okay, but I think for when we are updating registers, okay, we verify, everybody is asked to go. Now, the strength of the verification of a biometric is that it's your fingers, your fingerprints. That pops things out, put it there. And truly, if you were to go through that process, because it's fingerprints, you will deal with a lot of problems. In fact, the ghosts will not appear. You know, they are dead. And the people who have died cannot appear. And you can't impersonate, and so on. So it's a very important procedure to use, a verification. That will really show who. If you don't show up, you are either deleted, you can't vote, and so on, because it's your fingerprints live. One of the things the Nigerians said is that, you see, our voters registration card has the barcode, but it's not enough. You still need your prints as a human being. And you must be, there's no proxy. You have to be present. So it will do a very thorough job. Now, from CFI's perspective, we've also discussed this. If maybe we should go in phases. We cannot do that simultaneously as we are doing the registrations of the newly eligible. That is why, and then we found out that, oh, it's going on because it's continuous registration. That is why we found out that the loophole still exists. You know, what ID cards are they using to prove that my age is my age? And in our minds, we know that in the rural areas, date of birth certificates, and so on. Right. So this will slip. So you are still going to live.
I'll share a few messages, and then we'll take a quick break, return to this subject. And this one from Niyama. He says that Kwekubako's logic, if another party also alleges that they have seen the register of other countries, the EC has to go all over the world. Then Musa in Kumasi says, EC has spoken. It ends the matter. NPP should spare our ears. But so long as God lives, Ghana won't bow to their desperation and wicked intentions. Their allegations were unfounded. This is what happens when a party senses defeat a year ahead. Alexa Kufu says that, I think by the posture of and the comments by the EC chair at the forum, such as, quote, opening a new register would amount to opening up 30,000 conflict zones, unquote. It does appear that the commission had already taken a decision not to comply or compile a new register, making all this exercise a mere talk shop and a waste of taxpayers' money. We have got to be honest with ourselves as a people. Gerald Anthony Fredua Ajuman in German South District says, I thought that the work of the eminent five was to collate and painstakingly analyze the various views and advise the EC accordingly. Yes, that's what they are going to do. But you say, now that the EC has irrevocably articulated its position, virtually rejecting the call for a new register, voters register, what is there to report? Is it not the case of the EC exercising power in the background, which is manipulating the eminent five? I pity the eminent five. Akwesi Echampong says, very nebulous surgical method to audit voters register. Is it going to involve removal of organs, implants, or bypass surgery? The EC, as currently constituted, is very confused and overwhelmed by the forces standing up against their political leanings. If the EC thinks a new process to register voters will be a recipe for chaos, then relying on the current register could be the light that ignites Armageddon. Okay. Now, when we return, we'll deal with some of these comments that are already popping up. And certain people, including those in leadership in the NPP, there are certain comments that are being attributed to them that suggest that they are inciting some sort of illegal behavior. Ibrahim Kopa says, it is imperative to note that the guest and the quest and demand for a new voters register is synonymous to the struggle for independence. Wow. As such, the struggle for a new voters register will continue unabated. Okay, thank you very much for your message. And Akum Vioka says, I hear some minors were registered in 2012 and that they have become adults. Therefore, it may not be appropriate to delete their names. Please, I am surprised. We may need to ask ourselves a few questions. Number one, if they have now become adults, should we justify their wrong? Are we going to allow them to live with their falsified age? Two, I have not heard any suggestion on how to clean the register. Very important, we'll deal with that. Three, I have equally not heard how to avoid such problems in future. Well, the EC says, keep being vigilant, get your officers on the ground, because you are all part of the problem.
And we also presented how to deal with these.
Okay. Yeah. Number four, 2016 is at the door. All too soon, we will say we don't have time to go for a new register. Richard Kofi says, some of us are disappointed in the new EC chairperson for some of the comments she made at the forum. Charlotte Osei must not break Ghana. Okay, I'll not continue from there. I will not be a conveyor belt for that sort of communication. Kosono Ampem in Spain says, what Sylvester Mensah failed to provide the Ghanaian public was the life expectancy in the nations with high percentages of people over 18 years is the life expectancy. Okay, there's some mix up there. Ghana's life expectancy of 59 is not the same as the US or Germany, or say 80 and 85 years. Of 80 and 85 years. I am sure Sylvester knows the numbers as the immediate head of the limping NHIS. Akwesi Champong in Maryland says the EC chairwoman only spoke English, and we are not interested in the good English, but we need new voters register. She must do everything possible to bring a new voters register to avoid any possible conflict. Okay, that's the language I'm talking about. Bonti Benjamin says, all what the EC boss said was grammar and have no substance so far as the mountain of evidence provided by the NPP is concerned. Hashtag new credible voters register is a must. And before I take that break, Dr. Akweti, just in 1 minute, before I take that break.
How did you give them so much time? Okay, go on.
What do you say about the comments and the posture of the EC boss? Calm and firm. Is that not what you saw?
Yes, that's what I saw. And she interacted well. I think, you know, the public has the right to show this. But in the room, she dealt with the issues, the questions she was asked, and so on, in a very informed manner. And I think...
What do you say?
I don't know.
I just got a clarification from Doc, because otherwise I was a bit worried. The thing about the 30,000 conflict zone.
Yes.
She said she wondered, you know, given the nature of the competition now, 1 year to let the parties and so on. And I think it came in when she was reviewing what it takes, the options opened, and the time frame.
So she wasn't saying that if you did new registration, it would lead to conflicts. If that's what she was saying, then
no. She was raising the question that given the parties and the ABA, she said everything depended on the party.
Yes, and really,
and even specified them NPP, NDC.
It's too early in this journey. As I said, even the 2-day forum is insufficient to address the core issues. There will certainly have to be some more focused, you know, interventions and consultations between the panel and other stakeholders. So it's too premature.
And the panel said it might even call people back.
Yes, I think it's too early to make a judgment, to be honest with you.
But she dealt with the issues.
Okay, I mean, we'll take a break here. We'll be right back. Yeah, welcome back. This is Newsfile, brought to you by Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN, welcome to the new world. Sasso Spray, fresh and powerful. Star Assurance, creating smiles since 1985 and celebrating 30 years of solid partnership. Lipton Tea, that's your #1 tea brand, and Yamvita is the delicious way to grow. Bank of Africa, that is where you get the most convenient banking experience, and they have the swift money transfers that you can do via Western Union, MoneyGram, and Worry. You can bank on the go with the electronic banking products BWeb and BMobile, and also pay your bills and utilities. That is now value for your time. So hook on to Bank of Africa. They have branches all over the country. Now, how big is your dream? Are you on MTN? Your MTN number could change your life with MTN Dream Number. Win up to 10,000 cash Ghana cedis daily when 2 to 7 digits of your MTN number match exactly with the daily drawn number from right to left. All you have to do is send START, the word START, to 451 to subscribe daily for only 60 pesos. Your MTN number could make you rich, and I'm talking about 10,000 Ghana cedis. Terms and conditions apply. Join MTN today and say welcome to the new world. MTN, that is everywhere you go. And Star Assurance, they are making sure that in this world the risks that exist don't appear to exist at all. And you can contact them, starassurance.com, or visit any of their offices nationwide. You could call them 030-224-0632. Star Assurance, that is your solid partner. and Sasso spray kills mosquitoes, it kills cockroaches, houseflies, ants, and other crawling and flying insects. Sasso mosquito coil is smokeless. Sasso spray leaves a sweet lemon fragrance in your room till the next day. Sasso mosquito coil and spray, they are free from catarrh, headaches, and chest infections. So insist on them. Thank you very much. Back in the studio, my guests, Kweku Bako, Dr. Emmanuel Akwete, also Dr. Poku Dusay, and Sylvester Mensah. Thank you. Now, shall we, and I'm back to start with you again. Mr. Mensah, let's look at it this way. When the NDC says we can cleanse the register, and Prof. Michael Kwedo is MPP, says we should do auditing, do you understand what exactly we are all up to? That is, if we are not changing, we are not doing a new register. Do you understand what we mean by cleansing, auditing? What exactly are we talking about?
All right, thank you. Thank you. Let me proceed by saying that it's not too much about how many people are talking about a new register as against how many people are talking about cleansing and audit that matters. The issue is about the strength in the argument. It could be one party putting up an argument and all the other parties saying different. But the strength of the argument is what matters. Besides, in our country today, it's not too much about who makes the loudest noise. It's about the strength of argument. Coming back to your question, cleaning and cleansing, semantics, they are the same thing. What do we mean by cleaning? When there's dirt, you clean. What is the dirt? The dirt is a challenge that we find with the register having to do with double registration, for which there is an internal mechanism for flashing out. So cleansing means flash out double registration. Auditing means flash out any double registration. Flash out if there are minors. So essentially, what Professor Okwe is saying, what the NDC, we are saying the same thing. It's just the choice of words. In any case, when we talk of a new register, what is the definition of new? A new register doesn't necessarily mean undertaking a completely new registration from ground zero. That may not necessarily be what the NPP is asking for. I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, and looking at the technical definition of new, if you even review the register as has been done between 2012 and 2014, the cleansing and the auditing that has taken place gives us a new register. The register we find today is not the same register we used in 2012. So what we have now is a new register. Perhaps, I'm sure we may all be saying the same thing, you know.
Maybe not at all. I can help. You see, the Electoral Commission and election administrators have terminologies. Okay, and the same word you're using would mean something different. They don't go about talking about cleaning or cleansing or something. They use two terms, update and replace. Sometimes instead of update, they say revise. Yeah, they use update because they will do all the cleansing is just one component, the ghosts, names and all that. But then you also bring in new people and you have to put it together, which gives you, and that, when they update, they still call it a new register for that forthcoming election.
Okay, thank you.
And then they also replace it as the biometric replaced manual.
Okay,
yes.
Yeah, so I think that what is also important perhaps will be for the Electoral Commission to publish region by region where we have experienced double registration and where these have been flashed out. The public needs to know. And I think this is a very important information for the public. How many people were flashed out in the Eastern region, Greater Accra, Ashanti region, Volta region? Let us know. Make it public. And I also agree that, perhaps the time has come for us to take make examples of people who have misconducted themselves in the process of registration. That could serve as a deterrent, and indeed into the future a psychological deterrent against the possibility or tendency for such activity.
Okay, just hold on briefly. The MPP says, and McMahon puts it in this very graphic analogy, he says it's like taking malaria tablets and continuing to live in a mosquito-infested, zone. So you say that's a no-go?
And the reason is quite straightforward. The plausible argument you are making is that here's the case that these inherent mechanisms were existent, but yet still, within the past few months, the opposition party has been able to generate this overwhelming evidence, which has now culminated in a national discourse on this subject.
Untested evidence as far as the...
Well, significantly, you know that minors are there. Issues of non-Ghanaians are also coming up, and I don't think that they are denying that it's existent. So, when the system that already exists has failed us, what's the guarantee that using the same inherent mechanisms will be able to address the issues? That is the challenge now. I believe that it's a reasonable party. It has persons who are knowledgeable in this subject, saying that if a convincing argument is made that going through the inherent mechanisms, all their grievances could be addressed, we will go and then communicate with the Ghanaian people. Because what we are fighting for is to please the public that there are trust issues with the Electoral Commission, and how to do away with the distrust is what we are trying to speak to. I mean, when I followed some of the discussions as a result of the conference, the forum, I said to myself that the EC has distrust issues. People don't trust this. It's for that reason that the head must be seen to be in a position of trust. Said that anything that comes out of the person, the posture, will actually affirm that. And
but what is new about opposition parties being suspicious of the EC?
No, I mean, for instance, let me give you an indication. When they concluded elections in Nigeria, and how Professor Jaga actually conducted himself as the head of the institution. You know, a government in power, who is actually paid with the taxpayers' money, I mean, an agent of the state, and that agent could just come and stand before the electoral officer or the commissioner and then utter words that are so unwarranted that should not be uttered by a public officer. And the man sits down, he listens to you to the end with no reaction whatsoever, as if he is someone who has no emotions, and then calmly inform you that, you know what, you are an agent of the state. I expect you to behave in a way so that other persons will emulate good examples from you. And then, before he goes on to address the issue calmly. I think that's the kind of posture we expect from our electoral commissioner. You know, I believe when she was being vetted, I mean, at the background, to become the head of the institution, this issue of the biometric register might have crossed someone's mind. I'm talking of the appointor's mind. And they will want to tease knowledge on it as to what can be done, because the discourse on the subject has started before she was appointed. So what was her commitment in that kind of regard? And I think that is important, that you don't actually present a situation whereby you think if you kowtow to a particular line of argument, then you are creating conflict zones elsewhere, because people can misinterpret it, that it means you are now using with a threat of national security argument to cow Ghanaians into submission. But we know that when those arguments come in, then it becomes a red herring. You are not addressing the subject at stake, but you are saying that Ghanaians fear bloodshed. For that reason, you can't go and put a polling station elsewhere and put our agents there to supervise a new registration system. The president has a duty to Ghanaians that for every activity that will be going on in this country, there is adequate security to ensure that that activity is executed to conclusion.
Okay. Now, Mr. Mensah, for example, the MPP says that for 2012, the biometric, the BVD machine at the polling station, this is what it is. It it contains an SD card with a list of all voters in the constituency on it. Voters in the constituency on it. What this means, and a logical interpretation, is that what this means is that a voter can move from one polling station to many others in that constituency and be successfully verified to vote multiple times. So this is one of the problems they think we have with the system. Can it be the case that the registrations will be limited to polling station by polling station? So you can't have, it's not possible to have your name in this polling station and the other polling station.
Well, I don't really get that argument. You have a register, and everywhere in this country, you send this register. A name can be identified against which authentication can be made, against which voting, one can vote. Besides, we have other mechanisms for ensuring that people don't vote twice.
Sure.
There hasn't been any record in all this discussion relating to double voting. None has come out in this discussion. So this issue really does not arise. There has been no double voting. MPP has not come out with double voting in this discussion. They've not come out with the ability to impersonate anybody in this discussion, to the extent that it's been said that even if you don't clean or flush out those who are dead from the register, it still will have no effect on the elections, because the thumbprint of the dead cannot be used in any voting situation. And so there's a lot of weeds we need to uproot and come to the main McCoy, the real issue that is a problem with this register. In any case, as has been said, there is no perfect register anywhere in the world. And we keep perhaps mixing up allegations and evidence in most of our discussions, you know. Oh, so-and-so has presented some evidence. So when most of these are still in the level of allegations which are yet to be proven, to mature to evidence. And I think that we need to be very clear in the choice of words, particularly relating to allegations and evidence. We need to understand what the core problem is. We need to find out whether these problems, these risks, mitigating factors haven't been developed to address them within the system. And as far as I know, and from all the discussions and discourse that occurred, no one challenged the fact that we have adequate mechanisms for clearing what has been rightly defined as challenges, which do not in any way lead to a replacement. I mean, if I should pick what Dr. Akwete said, I mean, using update and replacement. Perhaps these two words would help clarify the issues.
Okay. Now,
well, if I can just correct something that Mr. Mensah said, that we have not complained of double registration. I mean, double voting. Yeah. I'm telling you, it was at the heart of the MPs that the NPP presented to the Supreme Court, and to get at least 3 judges to side with you in whatever manner.
We're talking about the presentations you made to the Electoral Commission. We're talking about the conversation that ensued at the forum, and we're talking about your submission on double registration and double voting and impersonation. These two never featured in any of our discussions. Indeed, if they did, it becomes a very solid ground for calling for a complete replacement of the register. And nobody anywhere would have any doubts that there's a need to replace the register. But if these two key ingredients are not part of your submission, and indeed they were not,
maybe you're not getting my point. The point I'm making is this. At this point, in present times, we are now talking about a register. Is that register which will be used to vote? And the register has been used before, no matter how tinkerings and other things that have been done subsequently. Based on the usage of that register, there was a complaint made in the Supreme Court of Ghana that there were double registration. So what you are saying is double voting. And so if you say that there has not been any argument whatsoever that if you have a metric register, there cannot be any double voting, I will disagree, because we have made that case until you...
Is it an allegation or you have evidence? You know,
we have evidence.
Dr. Charles Rekurobe suggests that if that's what you're talking about, really, at the Supreme Court, what you sought was to be giving victory on the basis of this same flawed register. So you should not be heard making this argument now.
Oh, he's saying that the minority view can never hold at some point. No, that's the more reason why in the Supreme Court, their decisions don't bind them. At some point, a different panel of the Supreme Court can come to a different conclusion.
No, so he's saying that for as long as you were seeking to be declared victors in the election on the basis of this flawed register, then it means you are capable of working with it into 2016.
Not at all. I mean, it means that he's not appreciating the chronology of events, how you start with registration, you get an album, and then on a particular date, the day is fixed for someone to vote. And because of the problems with the album, then it affects the eventual voting as well. So that is what we are talking about. He can talk about vigilance and all those. But, I mean, look at the laws. What real obligation is imposed on a polling agent when an officer of the state who works for the Electoral Commission says that this is what I'm intent on doing. But for the Supreme Court decision, I don't think that presiding officers could be, when it says shall, could be made to be, non-obligatory. So that is how powerful they are. Yeah. And we expect that polling agents should not be blamed for whatever happened. You can be vigilant, but there are some persons in the country whereby even if you are not from the area, in Ghana, I mean, we are all Ghanaians, and we believe that Ghana is a unitary republic. Once you go to another section of the world, and then maybe you see your mark, you don't come from here. So as a result of your vigilance, someone is saying that you are an alien. And those are the critical challenges that the political parties are facing.
Joseph,
mind you can't go everywhere.
Joseph, good day in Ketu North, in the Volta region, says, we don't want any foreign votes next year. So let's create a new register and elect good leaders who can take Ghana to the promised land so we can have jobs after school. NDC should stop beating about the bush. Then you have this one, you don't identify yourself. You say, my problem with those opting for a new register is that they have not provided even one solution that can help avert the old problems from reoccurring. Can they propose some solutions on how to fix this register? Now, Doc earlier was asking about the sentiments that are being expressed that suggest that it is either a new register or we are heading to problem, chaos.
Yes, I think what I would like to advise you do, and I hope you take it seriously, education, our understanding of what the biometric register is in the general public and even amongst us needs a little more engagement. And I think it would be good, maybe devote your program, one of them, to inviting experts on biometric register. If it means flying somebody over, I'm sure Multichoice has, Multimedia has a lot of money to do that. But we need that education. And that would help in pointing us where to go. Clearly, we shouldn't say that many Ghanaians don't understand that there is fundamental difference between the manual register and the biometric. And the biometric, because it's also technology-based, computerized, and so on, you can solve many problems that the manual couldn't. Once we understand that difference, and we also know that it is our unique identity, fingerprint identity given to us by God, that our system depends on now. I think many of the allegations of who got in and so on probably the questions will be different. Okay. I also think that it was the first time we did biometric. Nigeria, when Atahiri Yega came to, Professor Atahiri Yega came to Ghana in 2012 to explain what they've gone on, he said it was the first time they were doing this, and there was so many problems. And I think 2015, I didn't follow through because the reports dominantly or predominantly looked at what they call the permanent voter's card. And in fact, that persuaded even, I think, some of our politicians to begin demanding a permanent voter's card, only for us to find out that actually a voter's card is permanent. It has, you know, the barcode. But we decided that unlike Nigeria that has a chip that you put through the machine and that thing, you need our card, you also need your fingerprints, you know. So nobody can even steal your card to go and vote any longer. Because once you get there, you have to also print. So there are so many assumptions we are making and suspicions we are making that a little more education, as we had to do, we had to call biometric people to come and help us, you know. And it was so revealing. And I think that the nation deserves that from the studio, if you can do that. If you can't, give us the resources, the money, and we can organize it as
you brought Jega down.
TV.
You brought Professor Jega down. So you brought him down.
You benefited.
And we all enjoyed. So
yeah,
maybe.
No, I think the radio station should go into this to do good to Ghanaians, educate the public. Let's see what it is. Then the conversation will be very focused on what we really need to do. We strongly believe that the human-centered, human-driven problems that are undermining the credibility needs to be done. The biometric register we have did not address the persistent problem of registering minors. And as we are speaking now, although we all suspect that minors have registered because it's become the practice and our infrastructure is so loose, okay, and so weak, we haven't dealt with the national identification card and so on, and nobody is explaining why we couldn't do such a simple thing. Over 8 years, getting to 12. You see, any time we open up a register, a process of... it's not money. I think if we want to do it, we'll do it. We find money for almost everything that, I mean, our politicians prioritize in government.
That we should elevate that entity into an independent
It should be independent body. It should be empowered enough to do this work. It should not be financed from the president. It should not be financed so that today, what budget we have money, we don't have money. They should have the power, okay, to act to solve this problem in the national interest. With a procurement system that is credible and all that, I think we can go a long way.
And the EC boss also raised legal issues about the talk about using, you know, the data from the National Identification Authority. All of those things.
I think it can be resolved.
The legal framework is not yet in place.
So, yes,
we seem to be jumping the gun.
So it's just that, you know, the problem we are facing is that we have had the two parties in government could have solved this problem if they had cooperated, and they are in parliament. They could have solved this problem and given the resources, put the legal framework there, sorted out the coordination issues, and said, we really want to solve this problem of minors and foreigners and whatever by giving this card because of the good it will do for Ghana. It's not even only for the voters register. It is for economic business. The economy, actually, the problem they are bloated, the bloatedness of the register also comes from the fact that I hear that most banks and other institutions find the voter's card more reliable or credible than any other ID card because it was issued by the Electoral Commission and it's gone through a process. So they have known this, and I'm sure that the Electoral Commission has been discussing this, the NIA has been discussing this.
Do you also support the idea, for example, that the EC should be empowered so that it can independently, on its own, remove names from the register when they are discovered to be wrong entries?
This is why I think this whole
illegal
debate, the simplification of new or clean, is preventing our politicians to sit down with the EC and the NIA to begin really tackling the real issues. Do we have enough power to do this and so on? Because credibility does not depend on newness or clean. It depends on the measures you take to deal with the illegalities. You don't accommodate it and say, oh, it's impossible, let's go ahead and so on.
Let me hear from Kweku now, but before I do so, there's a question from Gabi to you, Mr. Mensah. It says, can my good friend Sly Tete explain to Ghanaians, Sly Mensah, sorry.
Sylvester.
Yes, he wrote Tete, well, often shortened. Can my good friend Sylvester Mensah explain to Ghanaians what informed his special registration to give free NHIS cards, finding 45% of poor people deserving that in 2 border regions, Oli BA and the Volta region, and less than 3% in Ashanti region, for example? So that's a question he's asking you.
Yeah.
And Ashanti region, he says, is the biggest.
You want me to
yes, I want you to answer that.
I just want to...
It's a question to you, so...
Yeah, I want to just give you the data. But let me start by saying that it's been an extremely difficult thing for me, particularly in the last couple of months, to speak about health insurance and registration. One, because the National Health Insurance Authority is a public institution, and we tried as much as possible to stay away from the line of political fire, particularly between NDC, MPP over registration. Health is an emotive issue. It's a matter of life and death. Very, very emotive issue. The mandate of the Health Insurance Authority is to ensure financial risk protection through registration of Ghanaians, giving them access to health insurance cards that would enable them access health care across the country.
This question has come up over and again, and the suspicion has been that this was deliberate by the governing party to show up its votes.
I want to help you. I want to clear this issue once and for all.
Do so.
But I think that initially when this issue came up, one, we didn't want to comment on it because it was affecting our business. And two, we thought that perhaps a political party wanted an opportunity, wanted an explanation for their members why the election outcome is one way or the other. And if that is the way a political party can find solace and comfort, why should we engage in the discussion? Indeed, we were extremely happy when they went to court and got a court injunction on the use of health insurance cards. It gave us a lot of comfort. In any case, if anyone decided to challenge that case, the person would have won. Now, let me take you through this again. Excluding the Electoral Commission, all the processes of identification that we have in this country put together does not match that of the National Health Insurance Authority. The Health Insurance Authority has one of the largest databases in this country.
Okay, if now, you can quickly just explain this.
Yes. So we had a duty of ensuring that we register our members all over the country. Now, if you look at the data of health insurance, the Upper West region accounts for the highest coverage. The average coverage is about 40% of Ghanaians. The Upper West region had the highest coverage of about 70%. Greater Accra had the lowest coverage of around 28%. If you look at the distribution of coverage that eventually averaged to 40, the areas where special registrations were conducted does not in any way at all suggest what the MPP sought to put across. Besides, as we speak today, with this headache and albatross and suspicion of the neck of the Health Insurance Authority, they have now been able to accelerate outreaches and, as it were, special registrations across the country. Besides, the data that was presented at the forum was completely misleading. I mean, it's inaccurate.
I was hoping you could quickly just address that, answer the question directly.
I'm saying that it is false, it is inaccurate. Special registration has been a major feature of the Health Insurance Authority. Special registration of the aged. We had programs with the Ministry for Gender and Social Protection. to target the poor in specific localities, registering and ensuring that all those above 70 years are registered, and the Health Insurance Authority embarked on these exercises across the country. Unfortunately, politicians decided to develop suspicions that were neither here nor there. The whole idea of health insurance and going to court has been a red herring. But of course, I mean, if today it allows the authority to operate and undertake its special registrations and outreaches,
all right.
I
Thank
mean,
you.
so be it. It provides some peace and comfort.
Just a quick information. The question basically was asking, on what basis were you able to focus on Bonahafo and Volta region more than the Ashanti region in getting more people registered in this part of the region than others? What was the scientific
Just
study
before
you did?
the election?
Yes. What was the scientific study you did which actually informed you that there were more people who were
You said they had a program and they just embarked upon it, and that
what was the basis of the study in coming out to the conclusion that people were poorer, just poorer in Ashanti?
Thank you.
Now, Ashanti region accounts for the highest number of registrants in this country.
Because they have higher number of population.
And in terms of percentages, Ashanti region has a higher coverage.
Okay, thank you. Now,
you should go to health insurance, go and get this
Mr.
data
Mensah,
as a basis for making informed arguments and not getting the public
Mr. Mensah,
misinformed.
Thank you. I was asking about the question about now the new thing that we are hearing, particularly from the opposition, and the suggestions as though the EC has made a definitive decision, and because of that, people are being asked and sentiments are being whipped, up that, there's someone who is within the MPP leadership who is, some comments have been attributed to him that the EC is intended in plunging this country into chaos and is calling on the youth to rise up, and all of these suggestions that no new register, no vote.
Well, I have to be very honest with you. I haven't seen it and I haven't read it. So it's going to be difficult to react.
Some of the text messages.
Yes, to a particular, but you are talking here of party officials. That's different from text messages.
Okay.
So I have to be very careful. But in the general sense, that language is not peculiar to this particular debate or controversy. If you go back, you will see similar things. But all the time, Ghana gets, we overcome these things. I'm not unduly alarmed. I don't think it's going to get us anywhere. I mean, people are going to remain focused. Look, my advice is this. My position is this. The panel, we've had 2 days of an exercise. In my candid opinion, educative and informative. Not a useless exercise at all. They haven't finished the work. We're going to have to wait to see their report and evaluate it.
They say they might even call some other people back privately.
Clearly. And then we evaluate the finality, the report that will help us moving forward. I believe the panel must also take into consideration the Electoral Reforms Committee's report. You've seen it. Yes. A lot of things are in there, some of which came up, but a lot are in there. That also must be adopted and become part of the panel's job. There's another report. It is a UNDP.
They have a clear mandate. The mandate is take public views on this one at this forum and give us advice.
Yes, but that Electoral Reforms Committee report itself is a EC report. It's a EC document.
That is so. It was cited.
And all the
so
I'm saying there's a relevance. That's the point I'm making. Yeah. And going forward, you are not going to have any serious integrity of the election without reference to that report too. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. They need it. It's an input. But there's also a report, the UNDP report on the EC. I think the title is The Conduct of an Institutional Assessment and the Development of a Strategic Plan for the EC of Ghana. That's the Electoral Commission of Ghana. Yeah. It was issued August 16, 2015. Very serious things in there.
Very dumb.
This STL angle, we must take another look at it. I know there are people even within the EC who are worried about that situation. Quote from the document, He says substantial amount has been invested on the biometric registration and verification. However, there is still no reliable voters register. That's not even the only issue. It says STL has not been transparent with the officials of the IT department to enable the latter to understand how the system functions, even though STL officials are based in the IT department of the EC. They were supposed to have done this capacity building before 2012. They didn't do it. And the question is, they are still in there controlling our IT department virtually.
And that's also part of what they actually make, a comment they actually make. They say that the management of biometric database has been outsourced to STL, who was expected to train and fully hand over the system to the IT department of the EC before 2012 elections. STL has not respected this component of the contract as at this assessment in August 2015.
Let me help you here, because I have worked in an institution that is IT bias, that has database and all that. It is important to appreciate that if you sign a contract and in the SLA you indicate that within 1 year you should hand over a database, what it also means is that within 1 year you must have the capacity to take over. Now, if you are even given, I'm not holding brief for them.
No, I don't think you should even dare. Look, it's a disaster zone. Let me tell you.
I think that
place is a disaster zone. STL has shortchanged this country. They have become so powerful. They are actually overriding the EC and its IT department. There are people in the EC who believe this, who know it, and who are trying to change it.
Unless you are saying that,
going on for the last 3-4 years.
EC is ready and capable to take over, and STL is refusing.
No, let's find out what work did the STL do in developing the capacity. That is what the report is saying.
The EC has a 62-member IT staff. And the report seems to suggest that these people are not fit for purpose.
Yes, up to now. So what has the STL been doing to enhance the capacity?
Well,
it's obvious they are not doing anything serious so as to continue their stranglehold on the IT department. Look, there are many other contracts we've been signing with those people that we have to re-examine.
I think you need to investigate this further. We don't have enough information.
Have you seen the UNDP report?
To conclude
have
on
you
this.
seen the UNDP report? Are you?
I haven't seen the UNDP report.
So please relax.
Okay.
But that report alone, that report alone does not provide all the responses.
I wouldn't say so.
We need to get the Electoral Commission.
But Sly is surprising me, you see, because he hasn't seen the report. And I've put out some information from the report, and he's contesting it.
I'm not contesting the report.
There's an aspect of it that is even a bit worrying. But I was waiting for my opportunity to be able to double confirm with the EC about some of these things, because it says, for example, that the EC does not have a developed IT policy, and that's serious.
Exactly. So that what I'm saying is that we need to carry our investigations into the Electoral Commission to find out exactly.
How do you know if I haven't done some of the investigations already?
And then you now saying that some officers are worried. Because it's the same agency that will be transmitting results from the villages and other places to the head office.
The EC needs a certain level of institutional reform. And I'm sure they all believe in that. Okay? There's been too much of stagnation in terms of the IT department over the years. We all praised Dr. Farijan, who was such a good person, good man, efficient administrator, but there were loopholes there, and those loopholes are coming to catch up.
I think every institution in Ghana has this problem. Okay, and look at our contracts. Why do we have judgment debts? They are very terrible, bad contracts, okay, that have been also entered and negotiated and so on.
But the opposition mistrusts the EC.
You can't even find some of the contracts the opposition signed with them.
I think
you can't find them.
I think that the opposition mistrust of the EC is not peculiar to NPP.
I agree.
That's what I
NDC also did that.
Yes,
I think we should separate the issues. I think that these are the issues that I believe we should spend more time on, okay, in going into because biometric will be IT-based.
Yes.
And so get those things sorted out, and you find out that the reprioritization of the resources would help really strengthen the system.
Right.
The mistrust, I think, that comes from the situation we find ourselves in. Is voters register easy because of the kind of political power situation we've created with the design of executive power.
Okay.
That is why we're saying that you need to really tackle this. Otherwise, you can't just clean or produce a new register and think these tensions and power issues are going to drop.
Thank you very much. But Gabi says that you have not answered his question because he said you registered nearly 1 million before 2012 voter registration and registered 45% of them in 2 border regions alone. We are talking about free special registration. And that is the emphasis, free special registration.
These numbers,
we'll take a quick break.
Numbers are
we'll be right
inaccurate.
back.
The numbers are inaccurate.